It was my sophomore year of high school. I was quite a good student, athletic, and weird for me to say, but I was also quite good-looking. So I was in the so-called sexy group in my class from my freshman year, and I was having a good time every day. But things changed when I became a sophomore. The members in the first year all got along well and were enjoying a student life. But when the class changed in the second year, the classmates changed completely, and the atmosphere was not so nice anymore. It was because one girl was being bullied badly. It seems the girl had been bullied since the first year. And the first day of her second year, the bullying had already taken place. Honestly, she looks cute, although she seems to have a dark personality. So I had no idea why she was being bullied. It was so uncomfortable seeing her whenever she was bullied. I approached the girl as soon as I saw the bullying, but she was like, "It's okay, just leave me alone," and she just pushed me away. I honestly thought that is why the bullying is going on. After that, I decided to stay out of it. A few months passed. I tried not to get involved because of what she said that day, and tried to stop it when it seemed to escalate too much. Bullying between girls is vicious and often happens out of sight. Then, one day, her desk and chair were missing from the classroom. Took more direct bullying than usual. A group of girls, probably the perpetrators, were giggling. I couldn't understand at all why they would do such a thing. It was hard to just stand by and watch, and because she hadn't come to school yet, I tried to find her desk and chair, hoping to find them before she arrives at school, but I couldn't find them in time. She had arrived at school. When I went out to the hallway to look for her desk outside the classroom, I ran into her coming to school. Our eyes met and I felt kind of bad, so in an instant, I think one of the desks is missing, so I'll go and look for it, I said. She instantly understood what was going on in the classroom and said, "Thank you." She smiled at me with a look that I had never seen before. I will never forget that smile. Actually, with a word "thank you." She turned around and walked back down the hallway she had come and left the classroom. After all, she did not return to the classroom that day. So I told the teacher that her desk was missing and left her to deal with it. I think she knew it was bullying, but for some reason, the adults would not try to do anything. These days, when bullying problems become public within the school, they pretend that nothing is happening because it's difficult to control the complaints from the parents. Seeing such a dirty part of the school, I started to hate the adults in my second year of high school. Then class started, but I couldn't forget the smile she showed me and was unable to get through the class that day. The next day she came to school before me. The teacher had put her desk back in class yesterday, and she seemed to be able to sit in her seat today. I was kind of happy, so I said, "Good morning," and approached her. For young IPs, I'd approached her before, but she had never responded and always looked down. So I had stopped talking to her at some point because I thought she wouldn't like it anyway. But today, I got carried away and ended up saying hi. Fearfully, I looked at her face. Then she gave me a bigger smile than yesterday and said, Her smile completely knocked my heart out. Actually, I thought anyone would fall in love with her smile. The class that day ended without anything happening. That's the kids who were bullying her usually went to her every break time to set up something nasty. Maybe they thought it was a bad idea because the teacher put the desk back after the incident from yesterday. I don't know what the reality is, but I am more than happy that nothing happened. In fact, this should be normal. Then, on the way home from school, as I was going home by my usual path, I saw her a little ahead of me. She noticed me, and for the first time, she approached me. "Thank you for yesterday, you really saved my life. How about we stop by somewhere?" A short walk took us to the destination. It was an old house-like warehouse. The place was dimly lit and didn't look like a house where people could live. "What is this place?" I asked her. "This is my house," she answered bluntly. I was surprised. Then she took me inside her house and asked me to take a seat. "Just take a seat wherever you like." I sat down in front of the table, and after about 30 seconds of silence, she suddenly started talking about what had been happening to her since she entered high school. She told me that when she first started school, she was able to have a normal life in a group of pretty girls. She has a strong personality and high pride, so they sometimes argued, but they got along well. Then one day, the leader of the group was in a bad mood. She got into an argument with her over a small matter, and they got into a serious fight. The next day, the leader of the group started bullying her. At first, it seemed that some people called out to her, but because of her strong personality, her pride would not allow her to ask for help from others. So she pushed people away like I was done when I first started talking to her. It was a vicious cycle, and the bullying gradually escalated. Then she told me the details of the bullying. It was so heroic that I honestly had a hard time listening to it. When I looked at her face, I saw tears falling down her face, but she seemed to feel a little better than before because she was able to let out her worries that she had been carrying all by herself. From there, we had an enjoyable chit-chat. Till late at night, we talked about other people's complaints, test scores, and so on. I decided to go home as I thought it's not a good idea to stay at a girl's house until so late. I didn't want to ruin the time that I had wanted to continue for so long, but I was still a high school student, so I had no choice. I knew there would be plenty of opportunities to talk to her again tomorrow. And as I was leaving, she looked a little sad and said, "Thank you for today. See you again." I wondered if she also enjoyed the time, just like I did, and wondered if she felt that she wanted this time to continue too. Although I couldn't understand why she looked so sad at the end, I said, "Thank you too. See you tomorrow," and left her house. The next day, she didn't come to school. She wasn't there. And the next day, and again the next day. Isn't she away too much? That's what I thought, so I decided to ask the teacher. And the teacher said, she switched to another school, as if nothing had happened. My mind went blank and I was so upset. I had a lot of questions I wanted to ask her, After taking a deep breath and calming down, I asked the teacher my first question. Why didn't you inform the class about it? Then the teacher said, I'm sorry, but I can't tell you that. But it took me less than a second to realize what she meant, and with that answer, all my doubts were clear. Why she went to another school. Why the teacher didn't tell the class about this. I'm not sure what the truth is, but I assume it's probably something to do with the bullying of her. Affections. I was filled with the anger and didn't know where to let out my anger. I could not accept the reality. I hardly remember anything that happened from then on. That's because I lived almost every day as if I had lost my energy. I felt that I wanted to find out the reason somehow, but at the time, I had neither the knowledge nor the courage to find someone who had moved away due to bullying. It took me about a month to accept the reality that she had changed schools. When I was finally able to look forward, I tried hard to focus on my future so that maybe one day I will be able to see her again someday. From that day on, I studied hard every day. I had no choice but to do my best. She was surprisingly very smart and extremely talented. So if I go to a university with a high deviation score, I might be able to meet her again. Thinking about it now, I was too childish to study like that. Then I was able to get into one of the top universities in the US. I was really happy, but the reality, of course, she was not there. I was still thinking about her. It was around this time that I finally understood that she was my first love. The 4 years of university was almost fruitless, just meaningless time passing, but I was probably burned out in a sense since I had entered a top-level university. I didn't even bother to go job hunting and ended up working for an ordinary small company. However, it was a typical blacklisted company that used new employees to make them work long hours and didn't pay for overtime. But I was still able to put in some effort because I had a dream of meeting her again, which I recalled from time to time. Looking back, I think it would have been better to change to a different company. Just at that time, all I could think about was just to get everything done, so I didn't even have time to think about changing jobs. Meant secretarially tuition, but new employees around me quit within a few months, but I hung on and 2 years passed. Needless to say, I had no information about her during those 2 years. Then, one day, the company I was working for a company that suddenly went bankrupt was a well-known company to some extent, so I did not expect this to happen. The media found out that someone above me had embezzled money, and all sorts of things came to light. They decided that they could not continue the operation. I was filled with anger. At the same time, I heard a sudden snap in my head. After that, I became numb with no emotions. I was angry at her for leaving without saying anything. This time, it was all to blame the stupid adults. I lost my job and was at a loss. I spent more than a day in my apartment thinking about the future. It's out when I left my apartment to buy something to eat at a store nearby as I was so hungry. I saw an expensive car parked in front. It looked stunning, but I wasn't that interested, so I just passed by. But as I was about to walk past it, I heard my name being called out of the driver's seat. It sounded strangely familiar. I turned around, and there she was, the girl I had been looking for all along, looking even prettier than before. She was smiling at me with a smile that was many times brighter than before. I was so surprised that I was speechless. It was as if time had stopped, as if in slow motion, and my mind was whirling. But when I saw her smile, I wanted to forgive her for all the anger I had harbored over the years. When I was being speechless, she asked when I stopped by somewhere. She approached me. Attentions. I didn't immediately get what she meant, but those were the words that I had heard the first time I went to her home a long time ago. I couldn't smile like I used to, but I gladly agreed. We drove to her house in the luxury car she was driving. But when I arrived, I found that it was a very large tower condo. At such enthralling, when she showed me to her place, she said, "Take a seat wherever you like when we were back in high school." What was different from the old days was that the room was so big that it took me a long time to choose a place to sit. As soon as she sat down, I told her something that had been bothering me for a long time. Why did she change schools? Why didn't you tell me? What happened after that? I asked her everything I was curious about, why she is living in such a nice place now. And she kept her smile and answered all my questions. She told me that her parents passed away and she had to move to a new school because her relatives had to take care of her. She wanted to tell me that day, but she couldn't. And now she is the president of a business company for which I used to work. When the company I worked for went bankrupt, they were looking for new employment for their employees, and she found me from a list of employees recommended by the company. When she found out I was around, she decided to go and see me right away. But she was worried about coming to see me because she thought I might be angry with her about the past and that she had no right to see me. Though, she kept thinking about how I was doing, who seemed to be the only one who had been kind to her back then. She mustered the courage to come to see me. We talked and talked and talked, and I was so exhausted that I fell asleep before I knew it, and I ended up working for her, also as her secretary. I'm still a new secretary and being trained hard by the president with great pride, but I want to support her as much as I can, both at work and in private life, under the supervision of the president with a lovely smile.